Is the mysterious Havana syndrome really a psychosomatic illness? Neurology expert Robert Ballo takes a closer look at the phenomenon that left government officials scratching their heads. U.S. intelligence agencies have concluded that the ailments collectively dubbed Havana syndrome, suffered by U.S. diplomats and intelligence operatives, were highly unlikely to have been caused by a foreign government, according to news organizations briefed by intelligence officials familiar with the seven-agency investigation. Like most people, I first heard about Havana syndrome, the author says, in the summer of 2017. Cuba was allegedly attacking employees of U.S. Embassy in Havana in their homes and hotel rooms using a mysterious weapon. The victims reported a variety of symptoms, including headaches, dizziness, hearing loss, fatigue, mental fog, and difficulty concentrating after hearing an eerie sound. Over the next year and a half, many theories were put forward regarding the symptoms and how a weapon may have caused them, and despite the lack of hard evidence, many experts suggest that a weapon of some sort was causing the symptoms. I am an emeritus professor of neurology who studies the inner ear, and my clinical focus is on dizziness and hearing loss. When news of these events broke, I was baffled, but after reading descriptions of the patient's symptoms and test results, I began to doubt that some mysterious weapon was the cause. I've seen patients with the same symptoms in the embassy embassy employees on a regular basis in my dizziness clinic at the University of California, Los Angeles. Most have psychosomatic symptoms, meaning the symptoms are real but arise from stress or emotional causes, not external ones. With a little reassurance and some treatments to lessen their symptoms, they get better. The available data on Havana syndrome matches closely with mass psychogenetic illness, more commonly known as mass hysteria. So what is really happening with so-called Havana syndrome? A mysterious illness? In late December 2016, an otherwise wealthy undercover agent in his mid-30s arrived at the clinic of the U.S. Embassy in Cuba complaining of headaches, difficulty hearing, and acute pain in his ear. The symptoms themselves were not alarming, but the agent reported that they developed after he heard a beam of sound that seemed to have been directed at his home. As word of the presumed attack spread, other people of the embassy community reported similar experiences. A former CIA officer who was in Cuba at the time later noted that the first patient was lobbying, if not coercing, people to report symptoms and to connect the dots. Patients from the U.S. Embassy were first sent to ear, nose, and throat doctors at the University of Miami, and then to brain specialists in Philadelphia. Physicians examined the embassy patients using a range of tests to measure hearing, balance, and cognition. They also took MRIs of the patient's brains, and the 21 patients examined, 15 to 18 experienced sleep disturbances and headaches, as well as cognitive, auditory, balance, and visual dysfunction. Despite these symptoms, brain MRIs and hearing tests were normal. A flurry of articles appeared in the media, many accepting the notion of an attack. From Cuba, Havana syndrome began to spread around the globe, to embassies in China, Russia, Germany, and Austria, and even to the streets of Washington. So is this a sonic or microwave weapon? Initially, many experts and some of the physicians suggest that some sort of a sonic weapon was to blame. The Miami team study in 2018 reported that 19 patients had dizziness caused by damage to the inner ear from some type of sonic weapon. This hypothesis has for the most part been discredited due to flaws in the studies, the fact that there is no evidence that any sonic weapon could selectively damage the brain and nothing else, and because biologists identified the sounds and recordings of the supposed weapon to be a Cuban species of cricket. Some people have also proposed an alternative idea, a microwave radiation weapon. This hypothesis gained credibility when in December 2020, the National Academy of Science released a report concluding that pulsed radiofrequency energy, quote-unquote, was a likely cause for symptoms in at least some of the patients. If someone is exposed to high-energy microwaves, they may sometimes briefly hear sounds. There's no actual sound, but what is called the fray effect. Neurons in a person's ear or brain are directly stimulated by microwaves, and the person may hear a noise. These effects, though, are nothing like the sounds the victims described, and the simple fact that the sounds were recorded by several victims eliminates microwaves as a source. While directed energy weapons do exist, none that I know of could explain the symptoms or sounds reported by the embassy patients. Despite all these stories and theories, there's a problem. No physician has found a medical cause for the symptoms, and after more than 5 years of existing searches, no evidence of a weapon has been found. Mass psychogenetic illness. Mass psychogenetic illness is a condition whereby people in a group feel sick because they think they have been exposed to something dangerous, even though there has been no actual exposure. For example, as telephones became widely available in the turn of the 20th century, numerous telephone operators became sick with concussion-like symptoms attributed to acoustic shock. But despite decades of reports, no research has ever confirmed the existence of acoustic shock. I believe it's much more likely that mass psychogenetic illness, not an energy weapon, is behind the Havana syndrome. Mass psychogenetic illness typically begins with a stressful environment. Sometimes it starts with an individual with an unrelated illness believes something mysterious caused their symptoms. This person then spreads the idea to the people around them and even to other groups, and it's often amplified by overzealous health workers and the mass media. Well-documented cases of mass psychogenetic illness, like the dancing plagues of the Middle Ages, have occurred for centuries and continue to occur on a regular basis around the world. The symptoms are real, the result of changes in brain connections and chemistry. They can also last for years. The story of Havana syndrome looks to me like a textbook case of mass psychogenetic illness. It started from a single undercover agent in Cuba, a person in what I imagine is a very stressful situation, and this person had real symptoms but blamed them on something mysterious, the strange sound he heard. He then told his colleagues at the embassy, and the idea spread. With the help of the media and medical community, the idea solidified and spread around the world. It checks all the boxes. Interestingly, the December 2020 National Academy of Science report concluded that mass psychogenetic illness was a reasonable explanation for the patient's symptoms, particularly the chronic symptoms, but that it lacked patient-level data to make such a diagnosis. The Cuban government itself has been investigating the supposed attacks over the years as well. The most detailed report released on September 13, 2021, concluding that there is no evidence of directed energy weapons and says that psychological causes are the only ones that cannot be dismissed. While not as sensational as the idea of a new secret weapon, mass psychogenetic illness has historical precedents and can explain the wide variety of symptoms, lack of brain or ear damage, and the subsequent spread around the world. This is by Robert Ballo, Professor of Neurology, University of California, Los Angeles. It's published from The Conversation here under Creative Commons, and this is on Unexplained Mysteries by T.K. Randall. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box.